Welcome. Tonight, we'll journey through unsettling Reddit stories, bizarre encounters, lingering chills, and memories that refuse to stay buried. Whether you're winding down or just seeking a thrill, these tales are ready to follow you wherever you listen. Let's dive in. A dead man walks my neighborhood every night. No one else can see him. I was on the far side of my neighborhood when I saw him for the first time. The middle of winter, and yet, he wore a t-shirt and shorts. That was the first thing I noticed about him. We walked toward each other, me crossing the street as an SUV slowly approached. I was looking at the ground, but when he walked past me, I felt a surge of heat, like an oven door had just opened. With it came a fetid air like that of burnt plastic. I turned around in time to see him crossing the street. That's when I noticed the second thing. The SUV came to a rolling stop at the stop sign. I screamed out and threw my hands in the air as I ran toward them, but the car passed right through the man as if he wasn't there. He continued to walk with his eyes forward. It was only then, looking at him closely, that I noticed the third thing. He was translucent, not obviously so, but enough that I could look through him and vaguely make out the dark shadow of a house. I watched him until he turned the corner. Then I ran home, looking over my shoulder every so often to make sure the ghost wasn't following me. At the time, my life was purgatory. I was 22 and had just graduated college. I was living with my parents and hadn't found a real job yet. I worked about 20 hours a week at a local grocery store and spent the rest of my time applying for jobs. I had this constant urge to do something crazy, move to Hollywood and live out of my car while I worked on my screenplays. Maybe I could sell all my possessions and travel the country in a van. I wanted something new and exciting. I didn't care if the new and exciting was a bad new and exciting. I guess that's why I went back to the street where I first saw the ghost. He wasn't there the first few times I went, but I could always smell him, that pungently sour burnt smell, sometimes more fresh than others. It became a routine. I felt like a paranormal investigator. One Sunday evening, walking about 20 feet behind a couple pushing a baby in a stroller, there he was, walking towards us. Same t-shirt, same shorts. I stopped where I was and just watched. Neither he nor the family gave any indication that they saw each other. The ghost walked with its eyes resolutely forward. The mom and dad continued their conversation. And then the ghost walked through them. I found myself biting my thumb as he approached me. My heart was hammering so loud that I barely heard the next car driving by. But I was determined to hold my ground. If there was a chance to experience something new, I wanted to face it. There had to be a reason why only I could see him. The heat and smell consumed me as he walked by. I became incredibly dizzy. I saw stars. Then he was walking past me. I followed. The walk didn't last much longer, less than 5 minutes. We turned a corner. He walked toward the first house on the right, then disappeared as he entered the front yard. I was stuck in place and breathing hard when a voice came from behind me. "You can see him too, can't you?" I turned around to see a tall, handsome man roughly my age. He was looking down at me and smiling like I'd done something surprisingly cute. A little kid who just solved a math problem she hadn't been taught in school yet. "Yes," I said. "Who is he?" "Your guess is as good as mine. You followed him, didn't you?" I nodded. "That's how I found him too. He's always walking the same path, but he disappears right here. I think it's where he used to live." "Why?" "I don't know. Like I said, I found him the same way. You want to get a cup of coffee?" I was so taken aback that I laughed. He flinched as if I'd hit him. "I'll take that as a no?" he asked. "Yes," I said, too sharply. "I mean, no, you shouldn't take it as a no. Let's get a cup of coffee and..." "You can tell me more about the ghost." "I don't know anything else, but I can tell you more about me, and maybe you can tell me more about you." I'm not sure if I said yes because I liked his smile or because I didn't want to give up the adventure. Either way, 15 minutes later, we had our drinks and were sitting down outside a local coffee shop. "So, how often do you see ghosts?" he asked. "Not often," I said. I didn't want him to know that this was the first time. I wanted to seem cooler than I really was, like we were both a part of this selective club. "I've been seeing them since I was little," he said, looking down at his drink. I learned that his old house was across the street from where we'd seen the ghost, but now he lived in his own apartment in the city. He just liked to watch the man sometimes. He said it was the only ghost he'd ever seen that never left. After that day, we started hanging out a few times a week. Sometimes we'd get coffee, other times it was dinner, a movie, or a walk. I can't say I ever liked him that much, at least not romantically, but there was a certain dependency that started not long after the first coffee date. To some degree, I felt close to him because of the power we shared. But he also had this anxious desperation. He hid it well, but I could tell that he was always holding his breath with me, or on the edge of his seat, silently begging me not to go. I felt bad for him. Most importantly, he was my key to the world's secrets. So when one day he asked me if I wanted to go back to his apartment, I said yes. Not because I felt that I had to, and not because I thought he would be mad if I said no, but because I wanted to be closer to him. Not sex, although that wasn't something I was opposed to. I wanted to see where he lived, what he kept in his fridge, what he had on his walls, what his room smelled like, what kind of shampoo he used. I wanted to know him, and you can't know someone unless you know how they live when they're alone. So we went to his apartment. He had no welcome mat or decorations, just a TV, a couch, and some books stacked against the wall. No kitchen table, no recliner, no place to put our shoes. He showed me to his room, a bed, a desk, and a computer. "You sure know how to live," he laughed. "When I was a kid, I spent all my time inside. I didn't get the chance to experience much. So, when I started living on my own, I decided I'd spend as much time outside as possible." It didn't make a lot of sense to me at first. I mean, was being outside inherently better than being inside? Over time, I've realized that what he really cared about was having a reason for everything he did. He never wanted to go to bed feeling like he wasted his day, and he didn't want to die feeling like he wasted his life. He didn't mind being home if he was home for a reason. To write because that's where his desk was, to sleep because that's where his bed was, but he never wanted to waste time. That's what was important. We sat down on the couch and talked for a while. I don't remember what about. What I do remember is the way his eyes softened and his lips parted slowly. How he lowered his chin in a way that made him look like a child. I remember, better than I remember anything else, how softly he asked me, "Will you please try to find me?" "What?" "I want you to go outside, wait a few seconds, then come inside and find me." Something about the way he asked made me just do it. I wanted to make him happy. There was just something so sad about him. I gave him about 15 seconds. There weren't a lot of places to hide inside the apartment, but it took me a long time to find him because I was walking so slowly. I thought he was planning to jump out and scare me. I checked behind the couch, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. I opened the towel closet half joking, but found him curled into a ball under the shelf. He was rocking himself back and forth and crying. When I reached for him, he straightened his legs and scooted out. He stood up and I kissed him. It wasn't exactly how I expected our first time to go, but yes, that was it. For weeks after, almost every night, I'd search for him and we'd make love. I didn't particularly like the strange game of hide and seek, but I didn't hate it either, and it made him happy, so I did it. We were lying in his bed one night, no hiding and no seeking, my head on his chest, when he told me everything. He saw a ghost for the first time while he was playing in his backyard with his mom. Only, he didn't realize it was a ghost. He thought it was funny that the yellow dog kept walking back and forth from the big tree to their back door. When he perfectly described the dog, which had died before he was born, was buried under the tree, and that he had absolutely not seen any pictures of, his mom brought him inside and prayed over him for hours. Later, when he saw a gray man in the house, she beat him so badly that he was kept out of school for a week for fear of teachers taking notice. She started drinking, and her beatings became more and more frequent. Only, she was smarter about how she dished them out. She hid him in places where no one could see the evidence, his chest and his back. She thought she could beat the demons out of him. He started hiding every time his mom drank, or when he knew she'd be coming home late from the bar. She'd walk into the house screaming his name. Sometimes, if he hid really well, it would take her over an hour to find him. But she would never stop looking until she did. Even now, he said, part of me feels loved. She always looked for me so hard, like I mattered to her more than anything else in the world. She wanted to find me and beat me because she thought she could cure me. If she hated me, she could have just kicked me out or killed me, you know? She never stopped looking and she never stopped trying, until she died. How'd she die? It happened when he was 12. She came home after a long night at the bar. She found him quickly because he wasn't hiding at all. He was sitting on the couch waiting for her. She went to slap him, but when her arm was just an inch away, he caught her by the wrist, squeezed hard, looked her in the eyes, and told her no. When she tried to hit him with the other hand, he caught that one too. He let go and she tried to hit him again and again, but each time he caught her arm. He didn't hit her back, but for the first time he defended himself. She ran to her room sobbing. "I should have just hid," he said. "She would have looked for me, and she would have found me like always." But in the morning it was he that found her, dead in her bed, with another her checking in closets and behind furniture. "I'm right here," he said. She turned. "You found me." She walked toward him like she always did, eyes narrowed and fist raised to strike. But when she brought that fist down, it went swiftly through him like a knife slicing a thin layer of smoke. She tried to hit him again and again as she screamed like a banshee. He backed away. "Why do you want to hurt me? There's a demon inside you. You need to stop talking to ghosts. You're a ghost." He ran out of the house and called the police. But as he looked through the front window one last time, he saw her, searching for him. "I think it has something to do with trauma," he said. "Or purpose. Sometimes I think they're the same thing. I was her trauma, and her purpose was to stop me. She thought beating me could stop me, and when she couldn't beat me anymore, she had no purpose. She's stuck living in a world where she's always trying to find me, even when I'm not there." When he was done talking, I told him to hide, and I looked for him harder than ever. The next day, we went to see the ghost again. "Why do you think he's still here?" I asked. "Trauma, I guess. And how come I can see him? You're probably connected somehow. You seem them more strongly when you are." We watched him for hours until he disappeared. I've always wondered where he goes when he's not there. Is he stuck somewhere in between our world and elsewhere? Does he choose to come back, or is he forced to? Over time, I began to feel strange and guilty about our hide and seek. Was I helping him heal him from his trauma, or forcing him to stay in it? I drifted away from him. We went from going to his apartment every day to hanging out once a week. He tried to reach out, but I always had some reason why I couldn't come over. Once a week turned to every other week. Then we were just texting every so often. At some point, we became strangers. I found a job as a tutor. It was full-time, and I found myself enjoying the work, looking forward to sessions, and feeling as though I did have a purpose, helping these kids get into college. Life was good. I didn't need to chase something extreme to feel like I was living. But like most experiences, once I settled into normalcy, I was bored again. The students seemed to get dumber and less motivated over time. There wasn't a point in what I was doing. These kids were all rich, and with their parents' money, they were going to be fine without my help anyway. I was just another servant to make their lives easier. In the same way that they could clean their houses without maids, they could study without a tutor. It would just take effort. When I got bored, I started reaching out again. I texted him a few times and he didn't answer, but I couldn't blame him. After all, the last text he'd sent me was asking if I wanted to get dinner. 2 months later, and I'd never replied. I went to the street to watch the ghost again. I wondered what his trauma was. After a while, it felt like watching the northern lights must after enough time. It was cool and all, but if I couldn't be a part of it, what was the point? I wanted to live excitement. I didn't just want to watch. I got in my car and drove to his apartment. I knocked on his door, but when he didn't answer, I went home. I tried again the next day and the next. As ashamed as I am to admit it, I started to get angry. I treated him like a video game that wasn't working. He was the reason I couldn't have my fun, my excitement, my joy. There was only one of him. I couldn't just go buy another copy. So, one day, after sitting outside his apartment for 3 hours, I just opened the door. I called his name a couple of times. I shouted that it was me. I said I just wanted to make sure he was okay. He didn't answer, so I walked inside and started looking. I found myself checking all the places he used to hide back when we were together. Behind the couch, in the bedroom closet, under his bed. When I walked into his bathroom, the smell hit me. He was lying in the tub, curled into a ball yet so flat that he was almost sinking into it. After a moment, I realized that he was sinking into it. The body in the tub was his ghost. "Oh God," I cried. He looked up at me and smiled. "You found me. What happened to you?" He didn't answer. "Why didn't you tell me you were going to do this? I could have helped you, couldn't I have? You were using me?" I paused for a second, tried to think of a response, then gave in, crying. "Yes, I was. But I still care, I'm sorry." He didn't respond, just stayed curled in a ball. "Why are you still here? Why can't you move on? Things are different." "Are they better?" He didn't respond for so long that I almost asked again. "No," he said. "Are you choosing to hide? Could you move on, somewhere else? There's a door, but I don't know what's on the other side. You need to go. You don't want to be stuck here forever. If I go, then who will find me?" There was nothing to say. It was too late. I left. I don't look for ghosts anymore. I recently left the cult I was raised in. I now want to go back. I'm sure I was born in the temple. Recently, certain people have suggested that I wasn't. I should be inclined to believe them after everything that's happened, but if I wasn't born in the temple, well, I don't like to think of the alternatives. Hello, Reddit. I wish I could introduce myself, but I have no name. I spent my childhood, my formative years, nearly my entire life in a cult. It's left me with countless scars, physical and mental, and I now think it's time for me to tell my story. I've been trying to get my story out for a while now, but for some reason, I always ran into blocks. Transcriptions of mine were misplaced. My caregivers would accidentally cancel my meetings with journalists, things like that. I have decided that there will be no middle man, just my thoughts and this computer. Much of my childhood is foggy. I remember the temple, of course. It was the building I called home for 19 years. You could spend hours wandering around the complex's series of long metal corridors and tunnels, with each wall draped in red cloth and covered in the seals and symbols we were taught to respect. My main caregiver back then was Demiurge. From what I knew, Demiurge was my father. He was the father of all in the temple, one way or another. I never knew my mother. In fact, I didn't see a woman until just 1 year ago. You see, Demiurge was our teacher as well. We'd spend time meditating, 7 hours a day usually, and when we were in the classroom, we would study symbology alone. Demiurge taught us that there was once an old world, a world where man could walk freely. There was grass and water and animals, as well as hair and war and death. The old world came to an end though, but we were a surviving pocket. With our work, we could one day purge the plains of the demons that now inhabit it. Until then, we kept to the walls of the temple and the sanctuary that came with it. Demiurge was a much smaller man than he acted, looking back at it. I suppose he would have been in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. He had a chronic overbite of necrotic teeth and stunk of urine, but it never bothered me much. I suppose I was used to it. He wore a red and black robe, which set him aside from the rest of his children, who wore only white. Demiurge was such a paternal figure for me. He was there at every stage of my development, from my first words to my branding. Other than him, there were only ever 2 other seniors present to rear the flock. The first was Salman, who I never saw personally. I don't think any of the others did either. There was an ornate wooden booth nestled into the front right corner of the classroom. We'd regularly be made to sit around it and listen to Salman read stories from the Book of Seven. Our favorite stories were always the ones about Oz. Oz was the man, well, more than a man, who'd reclaim the world for us. He was a powerful warrior, one who could see through the perfect illusions of the demons and the saccharin's sweet world they created. If I had the time, I could recite every detail of his life story to you. The main thing you should know is that he is the last one fighting for us. Once, in the blind foolishness of youth, I ran to the booth and peeked through the booth's canted slats. Emptiness. Just a tape recorder playing, its wires trailing into a hole in the floor. When I told Demiurge, he branded my tongue with a silver needle. Now you'll speak only truth." I vividly remember him repeating as he completed the ritual in his private chambers. For weeks, I tasted only blood and burnt meat. I suppose you could say Oz is our Jesus figure, if you want a Christian comparison, as so many of the people who first questioned me did. Aside from the symbols, the primary subject we studied was his life and his teachings. We were told that we'd one day join him, and it would be a great honor. The greatest honor. Only the branded few could, though. I think I mentioned it before, but while I'm here, allow me to explain further. When each of the children reached 14, we would get the mark of the septicle. With an iron metal rod bearing the symbol would be held in open flame and, with the rest of the flock watching, be seared into our skin, just above where your liver is. Apparently, they would wait until we reached 14 to test our commitment, our belief. Not that I've ever heard of someone being rejected. Much of our day-to-day involved mediation, often just by our cots or in the classroom, but on the special days marked by Oz, we'd spend hours in the meditation chambers. The meditation chambers were dimly lit, airless tombs where we knelt on grated floors until our knees split like overripe fruit. The vents above pumped in a sweet, cloying smoke that made the red tapestries ripple like living flesh. Some of the younger children wept silently, tears cutting through the grime on their cheeks, but discipline was absolute. I remember Caleb, or was it Jonah, collapsing during the third hour, his forehead striking metal with a wet crack. Demiurge didn't pause the chant. By the time the boy woke, his left pupil had bloomed scarlet from a burst vessel. "A gift from Oz," I remember Demiurge whispering to the boy, pressing his thumb into the ruined eye. "Now you'll see clearer." By 16, I was an adept symbologist. I knew everything from all of the major Old World cultures: Norse, Celtic, Choctaw, Hmong. They'd been drummed into me like a nursery rhyme. Most of the older children now spent their days practicing drawing these sigils until we reached perfect accuracy. I was always a leading student, I don't mind admitting it, and so I was one of the first taken to see the seer. He was the third parent, and one hidden from us for years. On the day of my 16th, the day I became a man, Demiurge led me with a smile to a large industrial door in the east wing of the temple. Usually kept behind a thick curtain, I'd only been gifted glimpses of it until then. I felt so proud as he pulled back the red cloth hanging from a crescent frame and ushered me in. I stood behind him beaming as he took a key hanging from a leather cord around his neck and fumbled it into the lock. It opened with a dull grind, and behind it was another small room, concrete and barely larger than a closet. Demiurge watched me walk inside and closed the door behind me. I can remember he put a hand on my shoulder, but I can't remember what he said to me. It was clouded by the shock of what I saw next. Through the final door, we came into a stone wall pit around the size of a small hotel room. Standing with Demiurge on the ledge, I could see that the bottom of the pit before us was covered in a carpet of bugs, beetles, and worms, writhing in liquid motion. Lying among them was a man, the seer. He wore a tight-fitting orange-brown rubber suit that masked every inch of his skin apart from, crucially, his face. I gasped in terror as I saw that the swarms of insects and maggots had picked the rotting flesh clean from his face, leaving a polished white skull. I tried to turn away, but Demiurge held me where I was. He told me that the seer is our only way of communicating with Oz. He's given flashes of knowledge from our Messiah, interrupts them, and sends the concise information into the mind of Demiurge, who acts on it accordingly. Demiurge told me that today was the day I'll find out what purpose Oz has for me, what role I will play in his holy war. After that, he stood dangerously close to the edge and looked at the seer intently. After some time, he began to nod. Then he smiled. I didn't know what jealousy was. I felt it from time to time, but the word was never taught to us. It was, however, what the other children must have felt when they saw Demiurge giving special attention to me. In the days after he received the message, as he was preparing to tell me my role, he spent more time with me than he'd ever done before. He let me eat with him, while the rest of the children remained in the granite canteen. I went on a number of walks around the temple with him, even to the higher floors. The further up I went, of course, the more industrial everything became. Stone walls turned to metal, and the lichen that gripped the walls were replaced with corrugated pipes. We'd also stopped just short of the door out, though, and I'm glad. I knew even in my current state I could walk the old world yet. That was a task left to Demiurge. 2 weeks to the day, he took me into his chambers and sat me down. I can remember feeling butterflies in my stomach as he spoke. His words were magic to me. I was so lost in pride I barely realized what he was asking me. This brand, he told me, passing the copper rod that bore the septicle, is power. It is the mark of Oz and a true honor to bear. It is also the mark of the Legion. We've trained you all well, but I'm afraid we are outnumbered. There is still nothing we can do. We are a speck of resistance compared to the violent might of demonity. His words took up the commanding tempo of a sermon as he spoke. I could not help but be wholly captivated. I rested my chin on a platform of interlocked fingers and listened. We need a veritable army, but our children, with their years of practice and knowledge of the scripture, are too important to lose. They will fight, of course, and it'll be a great shame once they're lost. But we need, he paused, considering his words, more expendable troops. I looked down at the branding rod, waiting to hear how it was involved with all this. Demiurge seemed to notice my curiosity. He leaned in, put a hand on my thigh, and explained. As I said, the mark of the septicle is powerful. To us, it shows devotion to Oz. To a demon, it shows ownership. Are you saying? I remember squeaking out. Enslavement, continued Demiurge, slay a demon and brand its body, and it will fight for us for Oz until its second death. Its true death. This, my son, is what I want you to do. Then came the preparation. To start recruiting for Oz's army, I would need to do the unthinkable and venture out of the temple. This obviously took months of learning about the old world across countless private tutorage sessions with Demiurge. I learnt how the demons, in the unholy inhumanity, not only wiped out mankind, but replaced it. Now they infest the ruinous concrete buildings, generating prana for their gods by engaging in rigorous but meaningless rituals. They disgust me, and I grew to feel nothing but hate. Hate. Shortly before my 18th birthday, we held a small feast for my leaving. I would fulfill the quota of 7 demons killed and enslaved. This command was given to me by Demiurge, but I felt like I could do more. Much more. Still, I didn't voice my opinion. We ate with the rest of the children, some older than me, most younger. Demiurge gave a heartfelt speech of the importance of my leaving. There was drink, good food, and laughter. It is now, while I'm writing this down, that I just realized I cannot remember any of the other children. I cannot picture their faces, nor think of their names. The more I try to do so, the more the burning headache in my brain grows. These are the people I grew up around, spent my life with, but try as I might, I can't remember them. They're ghosts to me. There was one boy who carved symbols into his thighs with stolen wire. He showed me once in the washroom. It remained one of the only interactions still somewhat clear in my mind. Shortly after the feast, Demiurge called me to his side and told me that it was time. We walked to the upper floors of the temple as I talked giddily about my coming mission. As we came into the now familiar industrial landscape, Demiurge patted me on the back and handed me a new robe. I stopped and took it with love in my eyes. It was pure black, ideal for staying hidden, Demiurge explained, but the inside was covered with intricate, interconnected white symbols. I stripped then and there and put on my new uniform. It fit perfectly. Demiurge smiled and handed me the equipment I'd need. The branding iron, of course, as well as a dagger. The slightly curved blade was cleaned to reflectiveness, and drawn along it were a series of sigils. Similar icons were carved into the red maple wood handle. Grasping it in my palm, it felt like power. I took both and swanned in adoration forward with Demiurge. He was taking where I'd never been before. The corridor ended in a small, rusting ladder. He climbed up, opened a small hatch above him, and crawled out into darkness. Beckoning for me, I did the same. We stood for a moment in darkness, my breath carrying a tinny echo. Demiurge closed the hatch, took my wrist, and led me. With a metallic creak, I was bathed in light. I walked from the newly opened large square door and into a cavernous room. Turning, I saw that what we'd be in was something I'd later find out was called a shipping container. The room had a few more of them scattered around, as well as countless wooden crates and boxes. Demiurge carried on to a small door in the far corner. He opened it, we walked out, and for the first time, I saw the old world. It was beautiful. The sun felt like a mother's touch on my cheek. The grass smelled like bliss. I turned around as I heard the warehouse door shut and lock. Demiurge had left me. Little did I know at the time, I would never see him again. I admit, I was almost struck down with thoughts of never returning to the temple. The old world seemed so inviting, so comforting. I thanked Oz for fighting for it, for my right to one day return in peace. The warehouse stood dilapidated in a long knoll that tumbled down onto a riverbank. A giant iron bridge stretched, connecting either side. Beyond it lay barren a small city, no doubt demon-infested. It was where I'd make my blood pilgrimage, I knew, and started onto the road. Almost immediately, a line of cars came screaming towards me. I hid down behind a metal beam after that and stayed there until the sunset and the automobiles became wildly less frequent. Then, I walked into the city. That first night was hell. I became an overstimulated mess and ended up crying behind a dumpster, too afraid to move lest the begging man slumped across from me showed his true form and slaughtered me. At dawn, he left with his hellhound, and I could finally move away. I crawled from alleyway to alleyway, keeping from sight as best as I could. A rotting sign I came across informed me that this nest was known as Detroit. I admit, much of what came next is blurry. I can remember breaking into a hotel and stealing a master key. I can remember collecting a few foot soldiers with my knife and brand. Their screams shocked me. They sounded so human. Worse, their corpses wailed start weeping once I branded them. After that, I find things become foggy. I know some time hence, while I was sleeping under a bench in a nearby park, a series of cars and vans pulled up around me. The light was blinding, the sirens were deafening, and I was taken away. After that, I don't have time to bore you with details. I am currently in a security guard's booth, tapping away at his computer. His blood has nearly reached the door and will soon start to pour beneath the gap and out onto the halls. I know that is when I will run out of time. I barely have enough left to give you the warning. Please listen to me. For years, this is the story my carers gave me. The doctors all repeated it to me, and if any humans end up reading this, they will undoubtedly use the justification with you. According to them, I am 38 years old. I grew up in a well-off, middle-class family near Ann Arbor. I did great in school and used to work as a freelance web designer. Sometime in 2018, my mother called around to my house shortly before my birthday. She found me unconscious on my bedroom floor with a cloaked man standing over me. He fled through a window and into the woods I lived amongst. My mother called 911 and they took me in for treatment. I had a lethal dose of dimethyltryptamine in me, as well as a small cocktail of other drugs. Worse was the third-degree burn on my lower abdomen, inflicted by a piece of white-hot metal in the shape of a septicle. The following night, I disappeared from my hospital bed. I was found a week later dressed in torn rags and bin bags, cowering under a park bench. I was arrested in connection to a stabbing attack in a hotel. The insanity plea came naturally. I spent my entire time in court ranting and raving about some sort of cult, rambling about getting back to the temple, killing demons, appeasing Oz. I was quickly institutionalized. I've spent years in a psychiatric hospital, according to them, but still often lapse into delusion. I'd gone almost a year without any setbacks, though, and I'd been foolishly entrusted with a plastic ballpoint pen. It was for a journal, but I'd managed to smuggle it back to my cell and scrawl the needed symbols across every inch of the walls. They'd worked clearly, and I was now free. Sharpened, the hard plastic end worked well as a makeshift knife. I can hear people running down the halls. Please listen to me. Oz is the only one who will fight for you. Let him. Happy Halloween. I should have listened to my gut the moment the second knock came. It was Halloween, midnight. I live in a quiet rural town in Pennsylvania, the kind of town where trick-or-treating is over by 8, and you can actually hear the leaves whispering across your porch if the wind's just right. I'd already handed out candy to the kids, made myself a spiked cider, and was halfway through a horror flick when it happened. Knock, knock. I paused the movie. It was midnight. Too late for trick-or-treaters, and too rhythmic for a drunk neighbor. Knock, knock. Two again, exactly the same. I walked to the front door, mostly curious. I didn't feel afraid, not yet. I opened it. Two kids stood there, a boy and a girl. Maybe 10, maybe younger, it was hard to tell. They were wearing outdated costumes, like something from a 1950s photograph. The boy had a paperboy cap and suspenders, a little too big for his frame. The girl wore a white dress with ruffles and tiny red shoes that looked caked in something dark. Their skin looked pale, wrong, plastic almost. But the worst part, the part that made my throat dry instantly, were their eyes. They were just pits, not hollow, not sockets, just smooth, featureless black like two puddles of oil that didn't reflect any light. I couldn't tell where they were looking. Trick or treat, they said in unison, flat. Robotic, cold. I stared for a moment. Then laughed nervously. I think you're a bit late. They didn't move. And when I say didn't move, I mean it. They didn't breathe or even blink. Okay, good costumes, I added. But seriously, it's after midnight. You should go home. They didn't flinch. The girl tilted her head. Can we come in? The air changed. I don't know how else to describe it. It was like the temperature dropped 10 degrees, but I didn't feel cold, I felt heavy. Like the atmosphere had thickened around me. I looked at them again, and a flicker of movement behind their legs caught my eye. A third one, smaller. Crouched low, like a dog. Its skin was gray, like old meat, stretched too tightly over sharp joints. No face, just skin. Yet it was smiling. You could feel it, the sick grin radiating from something without a mouth, like it was imagining you in pieces. I stepped back. You can come in, I said without meaning it, seriously. I didn't say or think it. It was like my mouth said it for me. The girl moved first. One step forward. Don't you want to play with us? She asked. Then the boy, it's Halloween. It's just one night a year. The thing behind them stood up. Its knees bent the wrong way. It sniffed the air with no nose. I could hear it, a wet, slurping inhale like someone drinking through their skin. I slammed the door, locked the bolt, turned the deadlock, then leaned back, my heart jackhammering. I live alone. No kids, no pets. I shouldn't have heard footsteps inside the house. But I did, upstairs, slow. Deliberate thud, thud. Thud. My chest tightened. My phone was still on the couch. I took a step back, then froze. There was someone standing in the hallway. Not a kid, a man. At least 6'5", dressed in a tattered suit. His head was bent low like he'd been hanged, neck snapped and twitching as he turned toward me. His smile was too wide, too many teeth. His hands were missing fingers. Some looked gnawed off, some were chewed to the bone. He opened his mouth to speak. But instead of words, a dozen tiny hands spilled out, like a nest of infant spiders, crawling. Reaching, grabbing the air as they scattered toward the floor. I lost it. I ran back to the living room, grabbed the fireplace poker, and swung wildly when the lights flickered out. Darkness, total. Except for one candle, lit on the floor in the center of the room. It hadn't been there before. The flame flickered, and shadows danced, but there was no heat. No warmth, only a smell, something between burnt hair and milk left in the sun. I gagged. The man appeared again, behind the flame. Closer now, he whispered something. And I swear to God, it slid inside my head. Thanks for inviting us, I backed away. The wall hit my back. I thought about jumping out the window, about anything. Then I saw them again, the two kids standing in my mirror this time. Only. They weren't reflections. They waved. Their faces were wrong now. The girl's mouth opened too wide, splitting ear to ear with needle teeth. The boy's eyes began to leak thick black tears that sizzled when they hit the ground. Then the girl climbed out of the mirror. Not like she stepped through it. Like the glass was meat, and she peeled herself from inside it, bones cracking, joints reversing. I remember screaming. Then the third one, the skinwalker dog thing, launched onto my chest, pinning me. Its fingers. Tongues, all of them, they explored me. Violated me, but not in any way a human could define, more like it was tasting my organs, sifting through me with every wet stroke, finding my liver most sweet and eating it. The kids laughed. Darkness went across my eyes and I disappeared. I woke up sweaty in my bed. I was relieved, realizing everything had just been a dream. I went downstairs to grab some breakfast. I looked at the time. It was November 1st. I sighed, realizing I must have fallen asleep early yesterday. But when I checked the mailbox, I found something really weird inside. I found a half-eaten liver and a letter. Reading, "Thanks for the visit, see you next year. Happy Halloween." I quickly called the authorities. They checked everything in my house and garden, but found nothing. Later, after an x-ray at the hospital, a doctor came in and gave me a really confused look. "We have very strange findings," he said. I looked at him, my mouth dry, chest still aching from whatever the hell that thing had done to me. "The good news is, we were able to replace your liver before any bigger problems arose," he continued. I blinked. "Wait, what? Replace?" He nodded slowly, eyes flicking between me and his clipboard like he didn't trust either. "Yes, but somehow," he hesitated, rubbing the bridge of his nose, "without any cuts, bruises, or even marks at all, someone magically removed your liver. There's no incision. Not even a scar, nothing, it's like it evaporated." I was stunned. "How the hell is that even possible?" The doctor just shook his head. "That's what we're trying to figure out." He left the room with a weird tension in his shoulders, like he couldn't get away fast enough. And that is where we are right now. 2 years passed since this incident. And I am sitting in my home writing this. I've moved 3 times since that Halloween. Changed my name, threw away every mirror in my house. I don't answer the door after dark. I don't keep clocks. I never say the words trick or treat. I thought maybe, if I isolated myself, if I kept quiet, if I forgot the dream, maybe it would leave me alone. I want to look at myself and be sure that this was all just a dream. But I don't know anymore. Lately, I've been waking up with strange bruises. In places I can't explain, on the backs of my thighs. Inside my mouth, on my ribs, something's shifting under my skin. Doctors say it's stress-related nerve activity, but I know better. They're building something inside me, and I can't do anything to stop it. It is what it is. But please just take with you what I've told you through this post. Just be careful on Halloween, especially around midnight. That wraps up tonight's tales. If you enjoyed them, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments which story will linger in your mind. Until next time, stay safe and keep an eye on the corners of the night.